thanks again for joining me for this video of a very small, miniature, tiny, weeny little waterfall. First off, I'd just like to say thank you ever so much for all the support everyone's shown me. It's been really humbling to see how the channel has grown so quickly in such a short space of time, and I'm so pleased that you value my work, so thank you ever so much. Starting off here with the Hotwire Foam Factory's freehand router, which they were very kind enough to send me, and it's a wonderful bit of kit. As you can see, it cuts out all sorts of shapes very easily, and it heats up incredibly quickly as well. And here I am just cutting out the basic shape of the waterfall from a 10 centimetre square block of extruded polystyrene. So I cut out the initial shape and it looks really cool. It's got all those kind of like lines, almost like stratus lines. I mean, I end up covering those up with actual rocky surfaces, but even if you were to leave it as it is, it would make a really nice kind of sedimentary look. And I use this tool then to just pare away the sides, get the right shape, and then at the top where the waterfall is going to be coming in as well, it's just so much easier than the sculpting tool for this kind of work, though the sculpting tool is also a fabulous bit of kit. So thank you very much, Hotwire Foam Factory, for sending me those tools. The Sculptamold, which is my go-to product, of course, I'm going to mix it fairly thickly as is normal. It's kind of like a big thick paste. I want this, and I spread it all over the sides. I could then leave that or carve it once it's dry, and it forms a good enough rock surface as it is. It goes dry fairly quickly, so you have to smooth it over, going over it with my thumb and my finger, etc., making sure I get a good coverage on it. And then what I'm going to do after I've done this is create the rock surface. But as I said, you could just leave it on its own and it creates quite a good rocky surface. But I wanted to make a bit more of a kind of a different kind of rock, a less sedimentary look. So I'm using bark here, which has got some nice stratus lines in it, basically. Some nice kind of fractured lines, really, I suppose. So this is just bark from a garden centre. It's a premium kind of bark, so it's not the stringy stuff you get. And then I just get various bits of that and I stick them on, paying attention to how realistic it's going to look, really. You don't want it just to look like a bunch of rocks pressed into the side of a cliff. And then I'm using more Sculptamold here just to smooth them, blend them, get into the gaps, etc. And once it's done, it looks something like that. So you can see it's really starting to come together. White gesso primer. Now this provides a bit of a key for the paint surface. So I just go all over the Sculptamold, and I make sure I cover everything, because even though the Sculptamold's white as well, it will take the paint differently from the gesso. So you want to make sure that when you use the gesso, you cover everything so you get a nice even look on the paint job afterwards. When I say even, I mean I'm going to be using the leopard spotting technique, but you don't want a bit of leopard spotting to look differently from another bit of leopard spotting. You know, you want an even application, you know, to make it look realistic. You don't want sudden streaks in there where you've got a bit of Sculptamold. So I'm going over that then with some black acrylic wash, and then spotting over some yellow ochre, just over kind of a third of it, and then that's some raw umber, or is it burnt umber? I can't remember which one's which half the time. One of them, the more red one anyway. Then I go over that with some SCENIC glue, and then once that's dried, because that kind of seals it in, then I go over it again with the black, and what it does, the SCENIC glue, once it's dried, is allows the colours underneath to stay there, so they're not just all running off. Vallejo earth texture, this is desert sand. It just provides, and then a bit of earth colour Vallejo paint. This provides the undercoat for the soil grassy areas. I just wanted a bit of texture just in case some of the grass doesn't cover it. you know, I don't want a grass to cover all of it anyway, so it leaves a bit of a texture. I'm not going to cover all of this in this dried soil and grout mixture I usually do. I'm just going to kind of sprinkle it over, so the texture underneath and the colour underneath, just make sure that none of the white is showing through and that everything is got a slightly textured finish. I mean, you know, you could just get away with using paint if you wanted. It doesn't have to be the textured paint, but I just liked it to also build up a bit of body. And then once I've applied the grouts, etc., I go over with SCENIC glue, isopropyl alcohol first of all as a wetting agent, and then SCENIC glue. And now this is a bit more of the this is acrylic paint. It's actually Vallejo acrylic paint. I think this is the Air model paint actually, so it's got a bit of a resin in it, so that's why it's a bit more shiny. But I wanted that because it's a bit slicker under the brush, so I could use an airbrush here, but to be honest, I kind of find using a brush easier, and I like the feeling of using a brush. So that's the undercoat of the river. Some 6mm static grass. This is by Knock, and I'm mixing wild grass beige and just standard wild grass, I think, and then I think there's a bit of PECO autumn mix in there as well, which is quite clumpy, so I'm just breaking it up a bit more. If I did this again, I'd probably keep it a bit greener in future, because it would just pop a bit more. PECO static grass applicator. This is the micro one, which is all I need. It's still very powerful, runs off a 9-volt battery. Mod Podge matte, which I just apply randomly over the surface because I don't want the surface to be covered completely in grass. I think it actually ended up being more covered than I had anticipated. But basically, you just turn the thing on and hold it a couple of centimeters above the surface, and the grass comes out looking all nice and upright. It's a very satisfying process. I've covered the rest of the model there in just in a rag to stop it going all over the place, and I brushed it out afterwards. Woodland SCENICS Fine Turf, which I apply again kind of semi-randomly over the grass. Now this covered up most of the barer areas, which I might leave a bit barer in future, just to add a bit more variety or depth to the model, I don't know. I also went over the cliffs in it, and then I used some coarse turf by Woodland SCENICS. If I was doing this again, I would do the resin first, but what I wanted to do was actually put some under the surface of the resin, but then I changed my mind about the resin anyway, and I wanted to make it less clear, and I changed my mind about the colour of the river. I wanted the river to look a bit more reflective of the sky, so a bit lighter blue. Isopropyl alcohol over that lot, and then I drop over some SCENIC glue again. Now my SCENIC glue is, let me get this right, 1 part matte medium, 3 parts water, and a couple of drops of dishwasher rinse aid. And it works very, very well. It dries off completely matte, of course. Finally, Foliage by Woodland SCENICS, great stuff. You could use seafoam covered in coarse turf, which is what this basically is, I think, or you could also use shrubs, bushes, weeds, such as I used in my realistic tree video. Check that one out. But I got some of this lying around and I don't want to waste it, and it's good stuff, and it makes good trees for models this size. I don't use it so much for the larger ones unless I'm making actual shrubs, but this I'm making, there's a tree there which is going to be growing out the actual out the river almost. Now I apply the structure gel here. This dries completely clear. It's acrylic gel, gloss gel. It's a very heavy bodied one. I go over the waterfall surface there because I'm just building up volume on the waterfall really. I wanted to add a bit of a relief to it before I pour the resin. And masking tape, this is professional masking tape because I figured out it works much better. And then wood glue over the edge because I'm not worried about the resin having a transparent look, so otherwise I'd use some very kind of glossy dam, because this doesn't create a glossy edge to the water when you see it end on, you know. But I've used 2-part epoxy resin here. It's an equal mix, 50-50, and I've used a tiny spot of green acrylic to give it, and blue acrylic, just to give it this turquoisey look. Because as I say, I changed my mind about the colour of it, and I didn't want to repaint the bottom, and I wasn't too bothered about it being transparent, because you know, when you see a river from that far away, which is effectively what you're doing here with perspective, it's not going to be. And there again, that was me using a blowtorch to pop the bubbles, but I wouldn't recommend doing that with all of the foliage. That was my mistake. Do the foliage afterwards, and be very careful with the blowtorch. You only need to light it over the edge, over the surface. You only need to just dab it quickly, and it doesn't even need to touch the surface. Just pop the bubbles with the heat, and don't do it too much or it'll start curing and bubbling away, and it will ruin it. Now this is Mod Podge matte, Mod Podge gloss over the surface of the water. Let that dry. A bit of Polyfibre for the waterfall. Not for too much though. I think I've used too much in the past, but I'm not going to with this one. I'm keeping it simple. The Mod Podge, just I didn't bother blowing it around with an airbrush this time. I just kind of stippled it. And now this is Snow Texture Paste by Vallejo, which goes very well as white water at the bottom of the waterfall. And then while that's still wet, just a bit of Polyfibre pressed in to act as the spray. So there we go. It's a very small diorama. I hope you like it. Thank you ever so much for watching again. If you value what I do, you might consider supporting me on Patreon. Thanks again. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you very shortly for another diorama, which is also going to be a little one like this. Thank you. Bye.